Your mic is muted. Hi everybody. How's it going? I'll let you know when your microphone starts working. Nope. Mm-mm. And we're off to a fantastic start. Still can't hear you. I wonder if it's set to a different setting on the Google Hangouts. Running a washing machine. Still can't hear you. Are you doing laundry? Still not. I wonder if people can just pick up the background noise for some reason. Wait, can I actually turn off the stream and then come back? I don't know if I can do that. Oh, apparently. Okay. Well, I'll talk about what I'm working on right now then. Right now I'm working on a new tutorial for everybody for CG Cookie. It's going to be my first one, and it's going to be on shape and form and how wireframe can apply to those things. I know it's kind of something that we haven't talked about, but I've been reading a lot about it in Scott Robertson's books, and I wanted to do a tutorial so that way it could help you guys explain further the idea of just being able to draw anything you want with basic form shapes. I see that you're back, but still can't hear you. Still not working, nope. Yeah, everyone's everyone's saying they can hear like a bumping in the background. Okay, restart your computer. We'll be right back, everybody. I would play music, but I think YouTube will probably take down the video for copyright stuff. So we'll be right back. All right, everybody, I'm back. Can you guys let me know if it's
Hello.
my? Oh, I can hear you.
We good?
Yeah, I think we're good. Unless there's still a bunch of pounding.
Well, I took off the hard line. I'm on Wi-Fi. Don't know
That's
why that would have anything to do with it.
that's very interesting.
All right. Hi, everyone. Hopefully, y'all can hear me now. Not just Joe, or else I'll be talking to myself and Joe for another 20 minutes like last week. Thank you guys for coming and for experiencing this little technical difficulty on the start. All right. Today, we are going to be live streaming blending. This is one of those basic live streams where it's pretty simple, and it's one of those things that's such a fundamental that I really want you guys to understand it if you feel you don't. So really quick, I got to post out the links. Usually I do the marketing as we're joining in, but today we're a little late because of what happened. So as I'm doing that, if you guys want to put where you guys are watching the stream from, and we will go ahead and give a quick shout out as I do this.
Oh, I'd also like to do a quick shout out to all the people we met at C2E2 this past weekend. Thanks for coming out to the booth, and it was nice meeting you all. And the only person I met was Kevin. So Kevin, if you're watching the stream, it's very nice meeting you. And he had some pretty sick cosplay armor. So, yeah.
That was
Do
awesome.
you want me to read all the hellos?
Yeah, do a quick hello and where they're from, and just keep going through.
All right. We have I Am Not, who's from Sweden, and they've started working on the Rose competition piece. So that's cool. Sydney Kruger, who is from Phoenix, Arizona, says hello. A lot of first timers.
Awesome. Hello, first timers.
Hello from Slovakia. Greetings from Sacramento, California.
Almost done.
Jenny May from the UK. Carissa from Washington. We got Brazil, Mexico, Kansas City, Florida, Croatia. Whoa.
Wow.
Another England, NYC. And someone is watching from their college classroom while they wait for their class to start.
That's awesome. All right, all the links work. All right, officially, welcome to the CG Cookie live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m., hopefully. There's no difficulties. And we usually post subject matter about an hour or two before the stream starts. And as always, if you have any questions, even if they don't pertain to what I'm working on specifically for that live stream, feel free to ask. We do these live streams to answer any question, even if they're not about the subject matter at hand. As Joe said, a big thank you to everyone that stopped by the CG Cookie booth over the weekend at C2E2, and that was in Chicago. And really quick, I guess I can show. I don't know, Joe, did you get any cool things?
Did I get any cool things? I didn't personally buy anything, but I did buy my girlfriend a pretty sweet commission from Ashley Riot. That was pretty awesome.
There are some really awesome people there. Peter Moorbacher, Scotty Young. These are conventions that it's not just for fandom. If you want to meet like some of your favorite artists, there's a good chance that there might be one there. I guess the big things is I finally got my sketchbooks and I was able to sell them over the weekend, and it's really exciting that I finally get to hold what I kind of ordered back in January. So that was exciting. And also, for those of you who know me, I'm a big Kingdom Hearts nut. So I finally got a Keyblade. It was pretty cheap, so I thought, why not? And I'm going to probably hang it somewhere downstairs. So that was my loot over the weekend. But today we're going to talk about blending. And I feel like this is something that I talked with a lot of you guys over the weekend. 3 or 4 in particular. I even had to pull out my notebook and try to explain like the Photoshop interface and my settings on the brush and how to get to those settings. So that was interesting. But this is one of those things where it was like across the board on the people I talked to, this is something that you guys struggle with. And I feel like this is such a simple thing for you guys to understand that once you do, you'll be like, oh, okay, like now I get it. And I think a lot of it just comes with building a strong foundation. So let me go ahead and reopen Photoshop here because I had to close it. Then we'll switch over.
Oh, Kevin says hello.
Hey, Kevin.
And that it was a pleasure meeting us this weekend.
It was awesome meeting you.
Oh, sorry, he used the word treat.
Oh, treats. Oh, and then also for you guys, if you haven't noticed already, we have the exercise going on right now that you should try and the contest. So I've seen a lot of entries already, and it's kind of surprising that it's within like a week of even announcing this contest, and we already got some great entries. Come on, Photoshop. All right, there we go. All right, I'm going to switch my screen over, and I'm just going to do some quick examples of blending. And if you guys have any questions on blending, whether it's something in particular that you're working on that you want to see blended, or even tips on why yours might be coming out muddy or it's not really transitioning well, feel free to ask. Okay, I'm going to switch over to... Okay. So once again, sorry again for the delay. We are hopefully going to have a clean stream next week where there's no technical difficulties, but you never know. But thank you guys for sticking with us. Okay. So blending. Let me go ahead. I got to switch my tablet settings again. Okay, so blending. I'm trying to think. I'm going to first do I used to do in college, which is a problem. I'm going to use a circle hard edge brush too. Red. All right, so if we want to get from a dark red to a light red, I think what we do starting off is we push up, like we try to blend down, but we don't really understand the concept of blending the two colors together. And a lot of the times it looks like we're just layering right over it. And this is where the colors become muddy. You get this kind of effect where it's not blended well, but rather it looks like there's a lack of direction. There's a lack of a gradient going on. So, and it's actually really hard for me to kind of go back into the mindset of when I first opened Photoshop and use the techniques I tried to use back then. And the other way I would try to do it is I would just use a soft edge and everything looked too soft. Like this. And then you get, sometimes it might look all right, but usually it'll get this muddy appearance and the gradient still really isn't there. And I think that this is the problem that occurs most. So let's go ahead and rethink how we're blending this. So I'm going to put this to the side. I'm going to say this is what you should try to avoid doing. I'm going to go back to my circle hard edge brush. Let's start with that red again. And then let's grab a lighter color. So now we got to get a transition from the darker red to the lighter red. I'm going to do the same for a soft edge brush. Because there's a big difference between using a hard edge and a soft edge. And we'll kind of talk about it as we go through this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a hard edge brush to blend down. Now right away I can tell you that using a hard edge brush is harder than using a soft edge brush. Soft edge brushes are pretty much made to do blending. And when I say soft edge, that doesn't just mean, that doesn't exclude every other brush that isn't like a soft fuzzy brush. So even with a texture brush, that the same category of getting that blended look quickly falls under more of a soft edge. Hard edge is a lot harder to blend, and I think that's where the struggle comes in for younger artists, because they're trying to use a hard edge brush to blend. So I can zoom in here to really get the point across of what I'm doing here. And maybe I'll create a duplicate of this layer, have it side by side, and really see what I'm doing here. So a lot of the times artists can get to this stage right here. You can see how there's a lot of the brush edge that's been left over and it doesn't look very smooth out. Now mind you, you can make something like this work. There's definitely different styles of blending. It doesn't have to be completely super smooth everywhere. And actually a lot of artists like to leave the brush strokes to be seen because it often adds interest and it's compelling. Joe, can you still hear me? We said 2 people enter the stream. Oh, never mind. You're on mute. Okay.
No, my Google just like freaked out.
As long as we're still live. I keep checking back on that little live button on the corner. We don't want
Yeah,
to repeat.
I think we're good. It just reset itself. I don't know what's going on. All right.
All right.
Dennis, if something comes up, let me know on Facebook. I'll be online.
Yeah. Good thinking. All right. So here's what I'm going to do here to blend this out. And I want you guys to maybe try this out for yourself. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then there's plenty of other processes that you can try out for yourself. I call this ESB. And this is what I use to blend pretty much everything. So the E is the eyedropper. So that's the first thing I do. So in this case, if I want to blend this area where it is more of a smooth transition, I'm going to eyedropper. So all I do is I hold Option on a Mac and it's Alt on a PC. I'm going to choose a color that's in a relative space around the area I want to blend. So let's choose a color like right here. Now the S, and actually before, maybe I'll write all these first before I start my blending. S is sizing and the B is blending. So first, like what we said, we're going to grab the eyedropper tool. The second part is sizing. So then I'm holding Control and Option on a Mac. I believe it's Control, or is it just Alt and right click on a PC? I believe it is. And that changes the diameter of my brush. So I can do that quickly, and I'm going to choose a diameter that would fit well for what I need blended. And this kind of comes with practice and just knowing experience over time on what size would work best. And then blending. So I'm laying the brush down. Now I'm not pushing that hard on the tablet. I'm pushing pretty light because I don't want to leave more edging. I want to try to start blending this edge. So to do that, I have to be more gentle, more patient with the way I'm doing it. So now I'm also working with a color that is darker than the area that I'm starting to blend in. So then once I get far enough down, I realize, okay, I need to choose a lighter color because this dark pink salmon color that I'm working with isn't blending a smooth transition anymore. I'm over darkening the area. So I'm going to go back to ESB, grab a color that I feel is more appropriate, size it out. And sometimes I can keep the same size. I can skip the S and go straight to B. And that way it's just a lot of picking up the color and then laying it down. So when I work faster, and if you guys ever watch any of my time-lapse tutorials, you can see I'm doing this all the time. Every now and then you'll see the eyedropper tool like appear for like half a second. That's because my left hand is just pushing that Option key like every 5 seconds. And I like to work in small circles for the actual blending of the colors. Now I've seen people do like strokes like this where it's more hashy, or some people go back and forth, but I tend to go more in circles. So that's another thing. You kind of have to figure out what kind of an artist are you in terms of what are you most comfortable with when it comes to blending. Because a technique that might work really well for me might not work well for you. And that's because you got to figure out what are you comfortable doing. And once you figure that out, a lot of digital art in general becomes a lot easier because then you can rely on that tool set and that skill set that you have and you feel confident in that skill set. And I really do believe confidence is such a key factor in digital art and becoming a successful digital artist. So if you have any doubts about yourself or your skill level, I need you to work past those and be like, okay, this is holding me back. I got to stop doubting myself and I got to really push myself to a point where I feel confident with the way I draw. And it really does lead to not only better pieces, but then you feel better about your quality of work in general. Okay, so you can see how long this is taking me to do it with a hard edge brush. So, but this is kind of the result I wanted to get with the hard edge brush. Maybe I'll make it a tad more of a transition down here. And then I'll move on to the soft edge brush. And then after the soft edge brush, I think I'm going to use a texture brush to show you how I typically blend nowadays. So I know that I feel pretty confident in blending with a hard edge or a soft edge, and I'm going to show you how that transitions into using a texture brush. Because it's not so much about it being perfectly smooth, it's more about the gradient and it holding its value. So I'll go through that in a second as well. And you can see the difference between stage 1 and stage 2. But you can also see the amount of time it took for me to get to that point. So now I'm going to move this over. Right there. Okay. And I'm going to, oh, you guys, it goes black on you guys. That's weird. Let me shorten it. Move it over. Okay, so I'm going to be doing something very similar with the soft edge brush. So I'll put the ESB directions on the side. Make a new layer. Okay. Now here's another cool trick, if you guys didn't know this, is when you're resizing your brush, and remember you can do that with Control Option on a Mac or Alt and right click on a PC, is when you go left to right, it changes the diameter. When you go up and down, it changes the hardness of the brush. So if you wanted a soft edge brush really quickly, you don't even have to go to the brush menu. You don't have to do anything besides the same thing that you're probably always doing, or at least I always do, which is going to my diameter shifting and just go up rather than left and right. So I'm going to grab that darker red. I'm going to lightly lay it on here. Grab that lighter color and start to get a transition going. And you can see how completely smooth and the amount of time you can save with using a softer edge brush to get that transition. And you really don't get any of those brush stroke effects. You might still get a few areas of where you can tell where the brush stroke ends, but for the most part, it creates that nice smooth gradient very, very quickly. So you might be thinking that's great, but that can look a bit blurry. It looks a bit muddy, and it can, and I agree. But that's where the whole idea of this is your foundation. So when you're building your foundation, you don't need to take all the time with a hard edge brush. And that's why I usually recommend when you start off any piece, work with a soft edge or a texture brush and work quickly and work fast, because you don't want to be rendering too soon when you're just creating the base. So if this is my foundation, if I wanted to add areas of detail or areas of interest, that's when you can go ahead and sharpen it up. So even just erasing the edges off, oops, let me go ahead and merge this down. Already gives you a cleaner sense of the transition, and it doesn't look as blurry, and that's because we're adding that contrast. Let me show you before and after. You can see how edging it off like that can really add not only interest, but it cleans it up. And you might wonder, well, how's that applied? Well, let's say that this red part was, I know this is going to be kind of hard to imagine, but if the red part was the arm, let's say this was the hand down here. And the white part was the background of the arm, or behind the arm, I should say. Well, let's say this arm was really blurry and kind of out of focus, and that's where it started to look kind of muddled. Well, if we grabbed our eraser tool, and actually let me make that look a little better here. Now, if we grabbed our eraser tool and we edged it off, you can see how it creates this nice gradient very quickly, and I barely put any effort into creating that transition down. Now, I don't know why it would be red. Who knows why your character has a red arm? But if it was more of a skin color, that it would make more sense. Like, let me add just a tad on top. It doesn't take much to add the appearance of skin. Sometimes it just takes one or two integrated into a base layer to really give it that skin appearance. You can see how quickly we can create that. So that's why I typically tend to use a soft or a texture brush starting off for my foundation, because I don't want to worry about rendering or detailing too soon, because then I get into the hard mix of taking hours upon hours on rendering when really I should be focusing on creating a solid base first and then worry about making it look pretty at the end. All right, and I guess I probably should answer a few questions. I'm assuming we have some.
Yeah, we have quite a bit.
Right.
I'm gonna just pop with the first one that's like the most.
All right, yeah, shoot 'em at me.
It says Sabrina Davis says, "Hi, my name is Sabrina, and I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions. I'm doing a senior career essay, and I need a primary source, someone who works in art, for it. I was hoping you wouldn't mind answering a few questions."
Yeah, I could definitely do that. Send them over on my Facebook page. So it's facebook.com/ I think it's Von Art or Von.art.
And I think she asked just one basic question here, and it was, "How did you get started in art?"
I guess art in general, I started as a kid, like most kids. I think I just took more of a liking to it and I just continued on. I mean, my sister really pushed me into it as well. So I think I was always kind of involved or surrounded with art. So it came like natural to me to continue that. But in terms of digital art, when I became serious, it was, I think, when I was a sophomore in high school that I got accepted to the art college that I went to. And it was at that time. Not only was I like for sure confident that's what I wanted to do, I wanted to do digital because I knew that's what you had to do to be in this industry for the most part. Usually digital art is the way to go for the art industry nowadays. And I guess it's hard to say when did I decide to become an artist, where I guess that's tough because it kind of depends on what you define as artist. So I would say in my high school years is when I really became serious about this becoming my career.
All right, the next question is a two-parter, I believe, from Jacob. The first part says, "I'm an aspiring concept artist, and I've looked into some colleges in California that have some good concept design programs. Is it worth the money to go to school, or is it better to learn mostly on my own now? Also, what schools do you recommend?"
That's a good question. This is one that we get asked a lot. And uh, I give my honest opinion where I don't think art school actually teaches you what you need to, I guess, obtain in order to become a digital artist. There's a lot of professional digital artists out there that are self-taught or went to a college for a different degree and then ended up doing digital art. And it does rely a lot on the artists themselves. So if you're more self-motivated and you think you can push yourself and it kind of comes natural to learn on your own, then I don't think art school is necessary. But if you need structure and you need that organized lecturing and homework assignment where you feel like you're going step by step by step, then maybe art school is for you. It's a heavy price to pay. And I really do believe that anything you want to obtain in terms of digital art can be found online, not only with our site with CG Cookie, but with like Noman or CG Tuts or Matt Cora's Control Paint. There's so many out there that I really do believe you can achieve not only a similar result, but probably a better result by doing most of your education online. And if there was a school that I would recommend, Fang Zoo School, and I believe that's the one in Vancouver. And there is, I hear good things about a Full Sail in Florida, and there is one in California that gets a lot of high regard. But besides that, I would say really look at yourself and do a self-evaluation of what kind of a learner am I? And if you really do think that, you know, you can push yourself without the need of guidance or structure, then I would try to do it online on your own.
And then the second part of that question is, also, I've seen artists use Photoshop for all of their digital work, but most of my classes at college really try to force us to use Corel Painter. Why do most people use Photoshop for painting rather than using Corel Painter? Which should I use?
To be honest, I think all digital art software are very similar to one another, and I think it comes down to personal preference. Where even I feel like I should be using Corel Painter just because I like the traditional effects that it can give off. But Photoshop is kind of the standard for digital art in today's media. And I would say it's the easiest to get comfortable with And I really like the blending that Photoshop offers. And I don't feel like I've come across a software that offers that same level of blending before. And it could just be because I haven't experimented as much since I was introduced to Photoshop in 2009, and I've been using it ever since, and it's become kind of my go-to. So it's very comfortable for me to navigate and get around. Where if I tried picking up a different software, it might become more of a learning curve. Where okay, well I kind of know where the typical tools that Photoshop would have. Now I just got to find them in this software. Where for me, it's not even worth the time unless if it was like this huge uh, difference in digital art. But really, most digital art offers offer a very similar experience. And I think it comes down to what you want to do. Where if you want to have more of a traditional look, I definitely think Corel Painter might be the way to go. But there's even some softwares like Paint Tool Sai or Mischief that add the line smoothing option, which Photoshop does not have right now. And that's where you can create pretty nice, smooth looking line art transitions without it having any warble to it, which Photoshop, like I said, does not offer. So I would recommend one of those softwares if you're doing more line art stuff, or even Illustrator if you more graphic design. But I would say it's usually the go-to just because it's the standard that most people use, and it really does offer a lot of functionality that are not seen in other softwares. Usually it comes down, or usually the difference are like the filters that Photoshop offers, or the blending, I would say more on my personal level. But they also have a few features, like they have 3D stuff and things that I've never really dived into that usually can be more seen as like an advanced software.
All right, next question is from Anna. It says, I have a hard time painting and recreating metallic tones like gold that aren't necessarily metal, but are metallic colors like the horns from last week's stream. Any tips?
Yeah, we can go through doing gold. Let's see here. I'll put this away.
Also, Feng Zhu's school is in Singapore.
Singapore. I can't remember what was the one in Vancouver that I'm always talking about. I gotta look that up. First, let me do some gold. Okay, so with gold, kind of like what we talked about, gold isn't a color, and it's really surprising. I enjoy when people tell me like gold is their favorite color. Like if they're looking for a paint swatch, they ask for gold, where it's like, all right, like in my opinion, gold is a mixture of colors. Now, when I say that out loud, I think of like the gold Sharpies. So you can get a specific color that replicates gold, but really it's a combination of a few colors that really gives the appearance of gold, and it relies heavily on light sources and the way it treats it. You know what? Maybe I kind of want to do this with a texture brush, because this will showcase what I was talking about earlier, where you don't need everything to be completely smooth to get a nice blend. So I'm going to use, what did I call this brush? I believe I called it textured. Yeah, just textured. So this you can download on the CG Cookie brush page if this is a brush that looks fun to you. I think first, let me just create just a mess of color as if you were just slabbing this on a wall. All right, so now I'm going to grab my second color, and maybe I'll put the colors on the side that I'm using. Now, I have these saved on my swatches, and that's why I think this is very important to have either not only a color palette, but a swatch kit or reference images that you can pull colors from. Unless if you feel really confident in your color picking ability, I would definitely lay out colors on the side because it's so easy to just grab them on the go. Okay, so I'm going to have a really direct shine in this general region, and then maybe a smaller toned one down here, maybe. Or maybe just one. Yeah, I think I'll do one big one right here. So knowing that, I'm going to push, oops, I'm going to grab that secondary color. So I'm going to push this color lightly in the area that's going to be heavy and then do a fade down. You can see I'm using that Alt tool, the eyedropper tool, picking up the color and blending down. Now I can leave some of that texture because I'm trying to get a metallic foil look to it. I don't want to go too foily. If I really wanted that, I might use a texture overlay or a finishing brush on top of it once I'm done. But for now, I'm just trying to create a clean transition of color here. But it doesn't have to be like 100% smooth like what we have down here. I can leave some of that texture because it actually adds to the appearance of gold. All right, so that's number 2. And I'm going to do these in layers so that you can see the entire process as we go through it. So now the third color, I'm going to choose it, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to push heavily in this area, but I'm not going to transition as far down as I did with the second color. So with this third color, I'll lay it on. I'll eyedropper tool it down. Be careful not to over or under blend. Now, depending on how this gold is laid on the object, because sometimes when you need the appearance of gold, if it's wrapped around, like if it's a crown or something where it's wrapped around like a cylinder, you're going to get a lot of these light transitions where it'll go like light to dark to light to dark to light to dark, and that's what kind of helps give the appearance of metal. But for this, I'm going to do more of a clean, smooth transition, like a slow bend, where the gold isn't quite as prominent with a curve. So we're just going to get like one nice big highlight here. I'm going to go back to that third color. On a little stronger here. And I can tell right here, if you can even see that, hold on, right here, like that's a bit too strong of a contrast. So I want to blend that down. So to do that, I'm going to choose my eyedropper, blend it out a tad more so it's not quite as distracting. I guess that's one of the biggest tips with blending is if there's an area that looks distracting, then that's when you need to blend it out. So like this transition might be too strong up here as well. So I'm going to blend that one out. Now sometimes it works for metals and metallics because you want that sharp contrast. But like I said, I'm going to do more of a smooth transition for this gold. But if we were working with something that was wrapped around, or like think of like a belt buckle, if you just Google belt buckle or like metal belt buckle, you see how many transitions from light to dark there are in just like a simple curve. And that's what will really help give the appearance and presence of metallic. Okay, so you can see the difference that that layer made. Now from here, let me go ahead. I'm going to change into this brush. So let me show you what it looks like on the side here. This, and it gives more of that foil look that I'm looking for. And once again, all the brushes that I'm using you can download on our site. I'm going to grab this fourth color, which is more of a saturated yellow. I'm going to lightly push it right on top of that area that we were just working on. But I'm not straying too far up or down.
Really quick question. It says, what is Tim's favorite Lana Del Rey song? Question A.
I love that question. God, good question. Yeah, if you guys don't know, I'm kind of obsessed with Lana Del Rey. I love her music, and I would say Ride has been a big staple for me just because I really connect to that song. But I could listen to National Anthem on repeat, Born to Die, some of the new stuff as well. But it would either be Ride or National Anthem. Those would be my two, I think, that I really attach myself to.
I'm not gonna lie, I can't get Young and Beautiful out of my head.
I love that song.
After watching Gatsby, I was just like stuck.
I kind of like her more melancholy songs now. Because when she first came out, it was more like beats and it was borderline hip hop, but now it's definitely very drawl and very floaty. I like it though.
Micah Tisdale says, let's sing, everybody.
No.
Everybody. There you go. I just sung everybody.
All right, so lastly, was that on the same layer? Okay, no. So lastly, I'm going to grab this fifth color, which is this very light, almost cream color. I'm going to just touch it on that highlight area. Now, depending on how clean of a surface, like this looks more of like a rustic surface, almost rustic surface. So I'm not going to be like start highlight like that. I mean, I could. It definitely gives, and actually, as I do that, you can see the difference that that makes. And it really does give the impression of a metallic surface. But I want it to be a tad softer. And then I think I might use a speckle brush to finish it off.
Yeah, I think something that's important is the intensity of light on metallic surfaces as well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sometimes people think that they see a bright speck, or they know that that metallic surfaces are super bright and reflective, but they don't take into consideration that too much can kill the idea of it being reflective.
Yeah, that's when it becomes distracting, like an eyesore. There we go. All right, so let me show you each layer individually. So start off with that, second color, third, oops, fourth, fifth. So it's just a transition, and this isn't exactly the way I would recommend for everyone to go about it, but I always usually build up off a strong foundation. So I start with a darker value of the color first, and I build up a lighter value, build up a lighter value, build up a lighter value, and then put on highlights. And that's kind of the way I render almost everything. And what's frustrating is where if you don't like the way it looks, sometimes it's hard to go back steps if you merge the layers down. So that's why I still recommend working in the layers, unless if you're fully confident that you like the way it looks, then you should merge them down. Otherwise, you might be working with like 400 layers, which admittedly I've done before and it's not fun. And with something like this, where it's metallic, if it really doesn't give the appearance of metal or gold at the end, you need to redo it, because that can be very distracting when you're trying to recreate a material, and that it doesn't even have to apply to metal, any material really. If you're trying to achieve a specific look and it doesn't get that result at the end, I really would recommend doing it over, giving it a second try, or maybe even doing a test on the side to really be like, okay, do I understand how this material works? Do I understand how it treats lighting? If not, then I need to go back and look at some references or maybe some tutorials on DeviantArt, figure it out, and then go back to my subject matter and apply, hopefully, the newly acquired knowledge to the piece.
This question I feel like I can answer pretty easily. It says, I use Paint Tool SI. I can't afford Photoshop / Corel. However, it seems all the artists I look up to use these for their digital work. I really want to get into and good at digital art, but I feel like it's hard to transfer any helpful information. Any tips? I would say that, like we talked about prior to this, about it's every single software is kind of universal, and the fact that they can all kind of do the same thing. There are little tiny things that each one can do differently, but you can still create really great stuff in Paint Tool SI. It depends on how well you know the program, along with because I know Photoshop has a really easy way of customizing brushes, whereas Paint Tool SI is a bit more difficult. But you can make really, really great brushes in Paint Tool SI as well that give off that same texture effect. But I would also use the advantages of Paint Tool SI, like the stabilizer is great, and you also have the blending mechanic that Photoshop kind of has with the mix brush, but Paint Tool SI I think is a lot better. And I would use that to the advantage, but you can still kind of achieve the same look. Like we had the master studies exercise that we did. You can see, like I use Paint Tool SI for that. So I think it's okay to use Paint Tool SI, even though it's cheaper. It's still a very powerful program, and it depends on your knowledge of that program in order to achieve what you want. And speaking of brush strokes and painting, it says, Ian Matt says, I have heard few artists talk about stroke economy in regards to art in general. So when it comes to blending as well, does the term equate to less strokes the same as better results?
I've actually never heard the term stroke economy, but I'm assuming it means you should be using less strokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree to it, but I think it's definitely a comfort zone and a safety zone, almost like a safety net, knowing that you can use more brush strokes. I do agree with it though, and I think I'm probably one of the biggest ones at fault because I do overblend usually, and that's a problem. So I would say to help with the stroke economy, which I don't know if I like that word or not, stroke economy. But to help with that, I think it comes down to building a strong base first. Because I think too many artists work with too many strokes and it's in the like first half of their painting. Where after let me sketch out a head here first. But after I do that, I'll show you if I start off with a strong base, a lot of the pre-work has already been done for me. And then it comes down to creating the transitions that I want based on where the light source is coming from. If I have a light source in the scene, like not all artists do realism and they might be doing more fantastical lighting, which is fine as well. But in terms of what was the second question? Less strokes is the same as a better result. No, I would disagree with that because I think there are some artists that do take a long time with their pieces with maybe over blending it and they can achieve beautiful, beautiful results. I think the only difference is they can probably be more efficient if they really tried to have less strokes in their pieces. So I do agree to it on some regard, but I really can't say like if you blend a lot, then you won't achieve an awesome look than if you didn't blend as much.
Yeah, I know stroke economy is touched a lot on in gesture drawing and understanding how to get stuff down fast. I think that's when stroke economy is like super relevant, is when you need to capture something quick, not when you're spending a lot of time on something. I guess that's like the main thing is how long are you spending on a piece is the answer to that one for me.
Yeah.
All right. The Acid Demon says, "Hey guys, I was wondering if you have any special plans for tutorials for the CG Cookie 5.0 release in your field of expertise, like a new series of tutorials, themed resources, or anything like that. Thanks and greetings from Switzerland."
Well, greetings. Yes. So when 5.0 comes out, we should have a new basics course all done, and then the first full course on understanding values. So I've been kind of going through doing other things at the moment where it's been very focused on like the exercises or like launching the contest. And I need to put the emphasis back on doing this value one because then after the value one, I believe it's a lighting and then color. So I do have a bunch planned out. So even as 5.0 comes out, that doesn't mean like we get to take a break. That kind of gives us more incentive that, okay, now every month we got to try to release a new course. And it's going to start out with value. It's going to be on a timeline that you would expect. So what you think you would need to learn in order is kind of the process that we're trying to give you. So if you follow it from the start to finish, you should feel fully, or you should have a full realization of digital art and really art in general, where we're teaching a lot of like color foundations and blend. So things like today's live stream on blending, stuff like that. And we really do believe that it's the fundamentals that artists really need to know, and then they can go off and do the cool, awesome stuff in their own time. But they really need to have a solid understanding of the foundations before they can do that.
I saw a question earlier. Oh, this is not the question, but they want to know, do you eat while you draw?
No, not usually. I actually have the horrible habit of forgetting to eat, and it'll be like a 6-hour spree where all I was doing was like drinking water or something, and I'll be like, I didn't eat lunch. All right, I'm to eat a dinner, lunch, a dinner, or whatever the thing is called. But I would say if you do eat while you draw, like try to have it something that's more of a healthy snacking, like almonds or something, where sometimes when you eat like potato chips or something, you might eat the whole bag without even realizing because you're so focused and concentrated on what you're drawing.
I don't think I'm going to get this name right. Do you want to take a whack at it?
Let me see it. Her.
Ken, is it Kande?
Conde?
Maybe. Yeah.
Sorry for mispronouncing
Kende?
it.
Hola, chicos. I get it because that's my last name. She's from Argentina and says, "You are awesome."
Thank you.
Ooh. Viva says, "I really like your voice."
Oh, Lord. Well, thank you. Oh my gosh, this is one of the worst sketches I've done. I think I'm going to roll with it because I think we're going to only go for another 10 or 20 minutes, but I really wanted to explain having solid foundations. So we're just going to roll with this sketch here.
Somebody asked if you could do so, like how to blend leather, like you did the gold.
That I might say for another live stream, just because that I actually do want to give more attention to. Actually, that might be a whole tutorial. Or actually, I was thinking about leather, and I even talked to Joe about this, where I want this to be probably the next exercise that we'll do is working with leather.
Oh, someone says, how do you go about painting blending the skin tones? And I would recommend going to our YouTube channel and looking at the previous live streams that we've done because we've done just skin tones. And in there, you can just watch Tim and how he approaches skin tones and blending it.
Mm-hmm. So really quick, I'm starting with this sort of pinky background, and that's giving me a foundation to work on. Now what I'm going to do here is actually I'm going to work with a soft edge brush to really emphasize it. Is I'm going to try to work fast and give emphasis to different values based on the forms of the face. And I'm doing it with the soft edge brush because I really want to emphasize that you can make something really quick without like spending the amount of time blending it than necessary. And you can go in later and you can do like all the fun detailing part. Actually, I might lower the opacity on this. Okay.
I'm trying to find a good question for you. Which one do you think is best, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Considering I've never seen Star Trek, I'll say Star Wars.
I was going to say Star Wars is... Although the new Star Treks are pretty cool. You know? But I think Abrams is going to make the new Star Wars really cool too.
I'm actually pretty excited about the new Star Wars. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, speaking of movies, another question is, are you going to see the Avengers?
I will. I actually am planning with my friends this Friday. We're all going to see. It's not the midnight release, but it's still the opening weekend, so it should be a lot of fun.
And we're going to a nice theater, aren't we? Like the ones with like the sofa chairs and stuff.
I think so. Yeah, we're going all out on this one apparently. But a lot of our friends are like big comic book nuts, so I think I'm more along for the ride on this one. Although I do want to see this. I do want to see Avengers.
I'm so excited, but I'm gonna keep myself reserved until I'm at the theater.
And I've been very resistant on watching my favorite reviewers' reviews of the movies. One of them was a half hour long, so I'm like, okay, there was a lot that was discussed.
This person says Tim is one of my favorite artists, and to find out he loves Lana too is just amazing.
Yeah, I was actually I used to get made fun of a lot because when I first started listening to Lana, I listened to video games like on repeat. So that summer when that single first came out, I was like obsessed. And everyone was like, that is the worst thing I've ever heard. And I defended her so hard back then that now that she's more relevant, I feel like I'm one of those snobby, like I liked her before everyone else kind of a person. But I actually really do like the fact that she is getting some notice because I really do believe in her work and the story that she tells.
Mike asks, how do you stop Photoshop from freezing?
You take it out of the freezer. I think the best thing you can do is restart your computer. Where it's not happened to me a lot, but whenever Photoshop does crash or there's like a problem with it, usually when I restart my computer, and I know this probably sounds like the least adequate way of solving computer problems, but it's worked for me many times, and I would say I would give that a try. But if you're really having a reoccurring problem with it, you need to either look online, search in like the Yahoo, or even just Google search what you're experiencing, what problem it is, and there's a good chance someone else has also experienced that problem and has also solved it. That's the beauty of the internet and technology these days. But that would be my biggest advice. Or if there really is no solution, then I would contact Adobe and get it from them personally.
Leighton Skilled Gamer says, what size canvas do you usually start with on a new project?
This is actually going to sound really lame, but today I did file new, and whatever the width and height was, I just clicked OK. So this is an 11 by 17. Usually I work by like 11 by 17 is actually not bad, but 11 by 14, 8.5 by 11, those are probably the three I work with most, just because I never know if I need to print something, and having it at those sizes where it's already kind of like print ready, it's usually the way I go. I think what's more important is the resolution. And when you're painting, it's so much nicer working at a 300 resolution, in my opinion, than a 72 resolution, especially when you don't want to do a detail work. All right, so really quick, I'm going to hide this line art layer. And you can see how we have a pretty solid look at where all the forms are without the line art. This is when I would probably go in and be like, okay, I need my line art for a little longer, clearly. But with just using a soft edge brush, nothing more. So there's no hard edge brush except for where I started there, which was by mistake. But you can see how quickly I was able to lay out. And I could probably even move faster than that, where you can definitely push a lot of your values in the foundation quickly. And that's what I think comes down to that economy thing that we were talking about. And then I could go from here, use my eraser tool. Let's go ahead and edge out the face, and I'll show you what that does when you go back to the results. This definitely makes an impact. All right, so now when I hide that line art layer, you can definitely see the edge of the face. And from here, it would be really easy to go ahead and clean it up without having to go over and over and over again, where it would be maybe just a few strokes to really clean it up. It would help probably more if I used more of my lighter values. So let me go ahead and maybe add some of those.
Let me throw a question your way.
Yeah.
All right. Oker says, do you ever think you'll do a tutorial or stream over concept sketching and producing a strong overall composition, or possibly even talk about it a bit now?
Yes. All right, I guess this is what we can kind of end off on as I'm finishing this very strange looking head. When it comes to creating a strong overall composition, okay. So like I said, this kind of varies from artist to artist, but I really like strong center pieces. So directors like Wes Anderson definitely has that same aesthetic, or even artists like Norman Rockwell, who I'm a big fan of, A lot of the old, like the 40s through 60s artists, I love the fact that they center everything and they really break that rule of thirds, and they almost force you to look in the center, which is very opposite of what we're taught, where it's like always use the rule of thirds, blah, blah, blah. And it's one of those things where it's good to know the rules so that you can break them, because if you're breaking the rules without really understanding why there are, and I say rules in air quotes, to art, then you might be doing it wrong, or it might become more of a less interesting piece because you're doing something intentionally for the wrong reason. So for me, I really love compositions where it focuses directly on the center and it has this bold contrast of subject matter in the area around it. Now, like I said, that's a very personal effect, but if you're going for a general, like to please the general audience, I would say rule of thirds, have dynamic pose, really focus on where your saturations are coming from. Dynamic poses that include action or some kind of fight mechanism usually works best. And also focusing on the S curve. And the S curve is something that I was taught in school where you want the eye to do this in your piece. So usually that's why you see characters that are like in these crazy poses. Oh God, I'm gonna make like the worst pose. Say the arm was shortened here. It's really close to the screen or something. Maybe he's skateboarding. I don't know. But something where the eye does that motion of an S, and it could be the opposite way. It could be sideways a bit. But as long as the eye is doing something more than going straight down or like straight down right, you really want there to be a fluidity to your piece. And usually with curves and accentuating the form, that usually creates a stronger composition. And even if the form is static, so let's say you're working on like this headpiece that I'm working on, you can still include an S curve. It just might not be as blunt or as easy to see. But for this, I can definitely see that we got some of this going on where the eye goes down this way because of that hairline, and that contrast between the skin tone and the hairline or the hair color value is very strong. So the eye goes down here, but then it comes back down to the face because as humans, we're always generally like appealed to the eyes, and our eyes can get pulled back up. And then if I really wanted the S to go back down, I really want this area to be very strong, to be more in focus than the rest of the face around it. So like the areas here and here. And I would really try to direct the viewer's eye this and then straight down. So to do that, I'd have to focus on the way that I'm complementing that structure and that form and be very attentive to how I'm adding elements to it. Because if I really detail like the neck back here, or if I gave it, let's say, a strong backlight, let me do a quick. If it was backlit like this color, and then maybe let's do a more obnoxious color here. This, your eye is constantly being pulled down to this lemon color. And that's because of the contrast in the isolation versus the rest of the piece. So you have to be very mindful of the colors you're adding. And this is a whole nother topic that we could talk about on colors being very important. Because if it was, let's say, more of this pink color, but it was on that value, it wouldn't be as distracting. So like this, let me make it a tad lighter on our value scale here. Something like that, if it was backlit like this isn't nearly as distracting as that, even though they're around similar values. But like I said, that could be a whole nother live stream that we could kind of dive into color on more of an advanced look. But I think for now, we're going to cut this live stream shorter. We are keeping this one shorter today because Joe and myself both have tutorials that we need to record. And the sooner that we can do that, hopefully the sooner we can be finished with them and create a good result. But like I said, maybe actually let's do 2 more questions because I kind of cut that off without doing the final question part.
All right.
Should I do a quick look through as well?
Yeah, do a quick look through so that way you can hit those.
All right. Someone's saying, I really enjoyed your stylized character tutorial on CG Cookie. I'm very interested in this art style. Would you suggest as the next step once I start to get these concepts down? I'm assuming you're talking about the Photoshop brother and the GIMP brother. And those are more flat color techniques, and I would say from there I would work on cell shading or a two-tone lighting way of lighting your characters, where it's very much base, light, shadow. And it's very common in comic book or graphic novels, and I would maybe experiment with that style. I don't see a new tutorial coming out on that anytime soon with CG Cookie, just because we're focusing so much on what needs to come out in the Streamline for 5.0, which if you guys don't know what that is, you can check out the information on cgcookie.com. But pretty much we're going to be really focusing on fundamental and foundations and really nail it, and hopefully give you guys a very streamlined process of understanding what is necessary to become not only a digital artist, but if you're interested in 3D sculpting or Unity, we're going to be doing those as well. Someone's kind of talking about what I just said about prefer art that is dominated by one color and has a few small key spots with differing hues. Yes, that's very appealing because we like the contrast of that isolation. And I don't know what about the human brain. What you're asking is how, is there anything behind that and how brains find things appealing? I think it's just the interest in the contrast. And I think that's appealing to our eyes, and visually it's interesting. Oh, great question. I feel that edge control is really important, but no one seems to talk about it. Do you have any tips or exercises that can improve edge control? The flower one that we have on right now, literally, I even mentioned that in the description. It's so important. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me go ahead. Pull it up here. Come on. There we go. All right. So the first flower right here on, I believe this is a pansy, where the petals right here, the hard edge that you need to fall right on the area under it is so important. And this is very much edge lining, kind of what we were just talking about. I got to make sure that this edge falls very cleanly on top of this lighter value edge. Because if it was blended too much, like this, it become muddled, and this doesn't really define the edge. But let me give a side-by-side comparison here. But if I went on this side and I really focused on creating a smooth edge without it being too distracting, the rest of the flower then became a transition darker down here. Because you're right, you can't have everything looking too soft or it becomes muddy. But if you have everything too hard, then it becomes unfinished looking. You don't want either, so you got to find that happy middle ground. So usually I work with either a soft edge or a texture brush to lay down a base, and then I'll work with more of a hard edge brush to continue from there. You can see the difference of something that looks muddy on the right and something that looks a little tighter on the left. Random question, but what do you play on the piano? I play a lot on the piano, usually a lot of Final Fantasy or any of the Miyazaki film composer stuff. I like that. But then pop culture stuff I play as well. Someone's asking, is there a tutorial on drapery and how clothes fall onto the human body? There actually is one on that we did as an exercise. Or no, I think it was a full tutorial. Yeah, it was a tutorial, and it was out 2 years ago. You can still find it. I still feel it's very relevant to what I really feel confident in what I talked about in that video. And it talks about fabric in general can be thought about in stressed lines, hanging lines, and I think relaxed lines, or just like tension. Before I just spout something out, I want to make sure I'm saying it right. Let me go find it, because there is a huge difference between a tension wrinkle and a relaxed wrinkle, and that really can kind of sum up all of clothes in general. Let me see if I can find it, because if I can find this reference image, I think it clearly states what you're trying to ask here. There we go. Okay. Open a new tab. Bring it down. All right. So here, yeah, the third one is called scrunched wrinkle. So it's hanging, stretched, and scrunched. And you can see in every piece of fabric, you can kind of figure out which one's which. So like a relaxed wrinkle is green, the stretched ones are red, and the scrunched ones are blue. Now it's easy to see it on a piece of fabric that's hanging on a nail, but then you can apply that to clothes. So for instance, let me grab a color here. The wrinkles that are near the crotch region are more of the stretched tension lines because it's being pulled, but then near the knee and near the ankle, these would be considered scrunched or compressed wrinkles. And then the relaxed ones, I don't know if there really would be. No, there wouldn't be any relaxed or hanging ones because all the fabric is being hung around the body, the article of the subject matter. So even with like the arm here, these are pretty much all scrunched, and then we have a few tension ones near the armpit. I guess that would be the best way to go about it. And this is the one thing I don't want to see is where, I mean, it depends on the style you're going for, but if you're really trying to study fabric and wrinkles, try to look at how wrinkles actually look. And I see this a lot, and it's something that isn't actually true to form. But when you're doing a style like animation or comics, sometimes you do have to work faster and you have to simplify all the forms, but that doesn't mean it has to be inaccurate. So you can still do accuracy with it being simplified. Okay, I think I'll just do one more. Oh, here's one because I find this important. Do you always use Photoshop when illustrating, or do you do physical sketches sometimes? So if you weren't here at the beginning of the live stream, I just finished my sketchbook and it came in the mail. And yes, I still do traditional drawing. And I actually think all digital artists, just all artists in general, should always have a sketchbook and they should always keep drawing traditionally, because I think there's a lot of things that you can pick up traditionally that you can't pick up digitally, and they do go hand in hand. So what techniques you might learn drawing traditionally or painting, you'll be able to apply to digital. And then sometimes what you do in digital can apply back to what you do traditional. So it's like this nice symbiosis between the two, and I definitely recommend it. All right, I think that's our live stream for today. I want you to check out the exercise 40 that we have right now. It's on flowers, and check out the contest. It's on the Rose Princess. You can win some big money. And I know me and Joe have been talking about we're probably going to enter this one, not to win obviously, but just to give examples of what we interpret as Rose Princess. And I'm pretty excited because I already have a few ideas. But the best thing I would recommend for you guys to do is maybe do some research first, whether that be going out and finding roses, and you can find them at a grocery store anywhere really that sells like bouquets, and study them, feel them, really look at the way that the colors transition into like almost a black. It goes like from black to red as it pulls out, and do some research on roses in general. Like I was writing down, I looked at a few sites on what does a rose symbolize, and I knew obvious things like love and passion. But then there was one that talked about balance and finding us, what was it? It was something on finding a balance between love and harmony. And I found that really interesting. And that almost, because originally I was going to have this princess sitting on a throne and it was going to be to the side. But now I'm going to pull her up straight and I'm going to really focus on it being symmetrical, because of that idea of balance, and a rose invokes that. And I liked that. So I think sometimes when you do a little further research before you actually do the drawing, it might help inspire, influence you to maybe pull in slightly different directions that mean something a little more than what you originally intended to. Okay, so I think that's all that I have in terms of the announcements. I will be with Joe at Anna Minneapolis, not this weekend, but next weekend in Minnesota. So if you are in the area, you should come by and say hi. And I think that's all. Joe, you have anything else?
Just looking forward to publishing my tutorial, the first one ever. So I'm super excited for that, and hopefully it'll help out everyone out there.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you next week, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.